to all the dispossessed youth of Africa, for perpetuation of communion with ancestral spirits through the fight for African freedom, and in the firm faith that the dead, the living, and the unborn will unite to build the destroyed shrines. Selah. Hello and welcome, beloveds, to Dr. Mumbi's Spiritual Show. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray that you are well in all your ways and that you're moving into living life truly on your own terms. I really want to thank every single person, that is subscribed to the channel. Thank you so much, beloveds. Go ahead and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks to everyone that supports us on Patreon. We do release some spiritual books on there every month. And many much more interesting information, as well as the news, which we've kind of left behind. But there's certain stories, especially about the pandemic, that we are covering. So definitely consider joining that platform. Today I wanted to talk about, spiritually transmitted diseases, beloveds, STDs. Because I think it's really important. There's so many things that we may know, but we may not recognize the importance of it. So we may not recognize the urgency of kind of purging ourselves of it. And one of the ways that Babylon has really mashed us up, beloveds, has been in promoting like sexual promiscuity. I was speaking to my father the other day, and he was telling me how, the three things that Christianity brought were prostitution, armed robbery, and corruption. And so one of the greatest mental onslaughts like that they put on our people is that our people were a dirty and promiscuous people. They tried to peg the whole, a lot of sexually transmitted diseases on our people, etc., when it's the Babylonians who engage in, things like bestiality, etc. But for so long we were cultured. This is the danger of allowing your oppressor to tell you who you are, beloveds, and to tell your children who they are, and to tell our story. It's so dangerous. And it's like we've been going round, trying to defeat the enemy, when defeating the enemy is just breaking down his story. But it seems so simple that so many people are missing it. Because, that notion that we were a sexually promiscuous people and I can do whatever I want with my body, etc., and the notion that, our parents were old-fashioned because, they were virgins till marriage, etc., none of it was ever explained. But the whole purpose of the Babylon system has been to separate the parent from the child, the elder from the youngster, to create that generational break so that they can have access to that child and influence that child, indoctrinate that child, mold that child to become one of their clones. Mold that child to have such a defeatist mentality that they constantly just mash themselves up. And you see, sex, beloveds, sexual intercourse, making love, whatever you want to call it, is such a deep and intimate act, because it's like you allow a soul into your temple, and a part of your soul enters somebody else's temple. You give over a part of yourself to that person's temple. So if you're a highly gifted one and you sleep with a murderer, beloveds, you've given that highly gifted part of yourself to their temple. And many of us have not been taught how to gather ourselves back, how to collect our spirit back. Because every time you have sex with someone, beloveds, there's like research that shows you exchange like 5 GB of information. So if we're living in the mental age and the promiscuous age, imagine how much junk information you're carrying around that is constantly mashing you up. And these are those soul ties that they talk about. The soul tie is a fact that a part of you enters that person's temple and merges with their spirit and helps them. And then a part of them is in you. And so one of the most urgent things is to collect yourself in remembering yourself. It's about gathering yourself from all these temples, that you strolled into either knowingly or unknowingly. Calling yourself back, beloveds. Because some of those temples are really crowded. Just saying. Some of those temples have thousands and thousands and thousands because you sleep with the person you sleep with plus everyone they've ever slept with. That's the information that you get. So in that 5G information that you're exchanging with your partner at that time, it was supposed to be a highly powerful act. Highly powerful. And there's many other things that happen with the sexual act, but the one that's really mashing up our people is the fact that a lot of people have a lot of ideas and thoughts in their head that are not their own. And sometimes they can feel like they're going crazy because they're just like, this is not me. Like, I'm not suicidal, so why am I having suicidal thoughts? Or I'm not a thief, so why do I want to snatch that person's whatever? It's because all these things have merged to you. So, for the highest level spiritual, masters of our time, some chose to just keep the energy to themselves, and they never engaged because they knew how much they would lose and what they'd be taking in. But if we look at the Agikoyo, for example, and how strict it was when you wanted to marry someone, people weren't necessarily selected for you. Maybe you'd meet a young man somewhere and you develop an interest in them, etc., etc. You'd now have to go to your aunt, or if it's the man, they'd have to go to their uncle. And I mean, there'd be a series of questionnaires, there'd be a series of things. They check the bloodline to see what diseases, mental illnesses, etc. were in that bloodline. And this is just the most recent ancestors. I can imagine how advanced it was back in the day. And if I told you how men came about, many ain't ready. So I'm not going to get into that. But, so they'd go into serious scrutiny to check the bloodline. And then we had the 10 major clans, all named after women. The 10 daughters, the 9 daughters and the perfect 10 of Agikoyo and Mumbi. So it was you'd have to check, is it the right bloodline for our bloodline? If you're a high priest, you could only, marry in the high priest. So there was so many things that were figured out. And sometimes they come and say, yo, I'm sorry about your attraction, but no, it's not going to work out. Because they have, Alzheimer's, they have this in there, they have alcoholism, whatever. I'm just giving the basics that we'll understand. And when they looked at the compatibility and the higher levels, the royalty, they would get the birth charts and the timings like they do in India. We did that here, beloveds. And they'd look at the compatibility of the two personalities. They'd have extensive discussions between families to know if the two temperaments would go together. It took a lot to bring in that next line. But you see, it's been so watered down. And the reason Babylon did that is so diabolical, beloveds. That finding out should just make you close your legs immediately and just start to detox and call yourself back. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, Africa.
Welcome back, beloveds, to Wake Up Africa on the Dr. Mumbi Spiritual Show. That's a mouthful. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I'm talking today about spiritually transmitted diseases of the sexual kind. Those are the most potent ones, because others, they have our filter. But whenever we go into a sexual situation, all our filters are off, and so we absorb a lot of of things into our subconscious just like that. And one of the greatest things that we are at risk of catching it is other people's spiritual ignorance and spiritual low vibrational, especially if you're a high vibrational being and you sleep with a low vibrational being. They will pull your vibes down until you're able to purge their energies, etc., by doing, one ritual or the other. And I'm going to explain rituals, what rituals are, why even churches are the biggest, ritual makers, etc., and the power of rituals. I'll definitely do a future episode on that. But, because everything assimilates. You see, whenever you have sexual intercourse with someone, a lot of information is exchanged, as I mentioned, about 5 GBs to be exact. And a part of you merges. You give them a part of you, they give you a part of them, plus everyone they've slept with, plus everyone you've slept with. And so, in this day and age, that's why they've totally encouraged promiscuity, beloveds, and put sexualized everything. Marketing is a sexual thing. It's a sexual act. It's all about enticing and sexualizing all kinds of products, to make you feel that you'll have this or you'll have that or you'll be like this or you'll be like that, all around that, because it's such a base emotion, and it's one emotion where when you're in your sexual mind, all other minds kind of have to try and compete for your attention, but they all you disconnect from everything else. And so a lot can be taken to you and a lot of junk can be given to you. And that's why it's really, as you awaken, and especially in this season, now it's become where you can even get, nanotech through sexual intercourse with someone who's participating in the experiment. Those are the levels we've reached, beloveds. So this is now this is way beyond that. Literally what is happening physically is what has happened spiritually for decades, where you've taken on people's, the weaknesses in their DNA, the diseases in their DNA, and their powers as well. But their thinking, all that information is just inside of you. And so a lot of us, beloveds, a lot of people right now are not just fighting their own thoughts and their own narratives, but they're fighting other people's stories as well. They're trying to get out of other people's fears and misperceptions that are jumbled up with theirs. That's why if you're single, take a vow of celibacy, beloveds. Because the higher you go, the higher you flow, the better the match you'll meet eventually. But that's not even where it is. It's all about reclaiming your power. And when you recognize how much power you give away, how much information you give away, and you see how hard you're waking and, you're working on your awakening, it just doesn't even make no sense to be out there, jumping from bed to bed, beloveds. Because the ignorance of others could keep you from your future. Because you'll be about to leap, and then those low vibe thoughts that aren't even your own will start to creep in. Those low vibe, fears. And so it's so important, beloveds, because a lot of people are like, what can we do? What can we do to change this? What can we do to change the world? And it's all about changing yourself. In changing yourself, you change the world. And there's so much for you to do where you are, beloved. Start the clearing. And, as you start things, they accelerate. And it's just like as you clear things out, you go into higher dimensions of yourself. Because these are things that, they found that even mothers who, unenlightened mothers who didn't do any rituals to clear themselves, they had children that looked and behaved like their exes, some from even 10 years before. That's how real this thing is. So if that can happen from, if you can manifest someone's DNA that you slept with, on a drunken night in college, when you're with the love of your life and you guys want to create a home, it's a problem, beloveds. And that's why you'll see, all of a sudden, a family, a wealthy, whatever, very more righteous family will all of a sudden give birth to a thief. How does that happen? I'm just giving a very basic example. because someone somewhere slept with a thief, and that energy is still out there, in the temple, roaming around. And now it has an opportunity to come out and express itself. I share this to say, beloveds, we were never the promiscuous ones. It was always the Babylonians. Everything is back to front and upside down. It was not the way it is right now. And that is what is causing a lot of people delay, causing them people unnecessary obstacles, is the fact that they still have so many other, information from so many other beings roaming inside of them. Some thousands. You may have slept with only 5 people, but if each of those 5 people slept with 1,000 people, you slept with 5,000 people. These are things that we were never taught. We were never taught the depth of that. The fact that I give my power and I receive power. If we'd known that, then there's some power, there's somewhere we didn't get any power. You gave your power, but you got nothing in return, nothing of value. Because it was like a god sleeping with, the daughters of man. But nothing is lost because this is a vessel, beloved. But in order for you to operate in your fullest power and highest potential, you have to get this vessel cleaned out. And you have to stop putting random foreign information into the vessel so that you can move in your highest potential. Tuko pamoja.